Hello, I'm Bruce Lee Livingston. I'm the Executive Director of Alcohol Justice, a local, state, and national alcohol watchdog organization. I'm here today to talk about what's happened with regulation and as a result of COVID-19 and what you can do about it. So what changed in the past year? Alcohol policy and drinking patterns and COVID-19 lockdowns. I'm going to be talking about changes in drinking behaviors, some various studies that have been done, and the harm to youth and how you can take action. First of all, let's talk about COVID-19 and alcohol. Of course, it suppresses the immune system. It creates inflammation. It lowers our inhibitions, promoting risky behavior when we're outside or in a social situation. And it's impacted our services at hospitals. Bars and restaurants have closed down, obviously under a lot of economic stress. There's been increased stockpiling of alcohol. We'll go into detail on that. And states have moved to protect the restaurant economy through regulatory relief. And now they want to follow up some of them, many of them, with permanent deregulation. What does regulatory relief mean? To me, it means you're relieving yourself as a public agency from regulating alcohol. It's just an emergency order to say we will not enforce our own alcoholic beverage laws. The kinds of regulatory relief we have seen is that unsealed drinks can be taken off of premises. That would be cocktails to go. Delivery services are receiving rights to do third-party home delivery or direct from the restaurant or bar. And the footprint for service has expanded. That is, bars are expanding into patios, roofs, and streets with parklets, and sometimes parks and shared party zones. So these temporary measures were very fearful that they could become permanent. Alcohol harm before COVID was excessive. The 2015 report on cost shows that over $249 billion is a cost to the economy, over 79,000 deaths. That's actually been rising a little bit. And alcohol use disorders increased 50% from 2002 to 2012. We're kind of in a major wave of increased alcohol use in the United States. Only 4.6% of adults with AUD received treatment in 2018. Some of the causes of harm include, of course, traffic collisions, homicide, suicide, domestic violence, and of course there are long-term impacts as well. Dozens of diseases associated with alcohol. And good news is that closing bars and decreasing concentration is associated with decreased alcohol use. So let's look at what we're discovering, what happened during COVID, and now as we're getting out of COVID a little bit, we hope, what's going to be happening in the future. Alcohol sales increased 54% in March 2020, and online sales just skyrocketed 5%. That's from National Institute on Alcohol and Alcohol Abuse and IEEE. What am I talking about? Anyway, early surveillance of the COVID-19 effects. Also, this study by Barbosa showed a 29% increase in drinks per day, and excessive drinking increased 25%, binge drinking 21%, and we're seeing special effects on populations. Women and African-American respondents were more likely to report an increase. Alcohol Justice, along with Institute for Public Strategies, conducted a survey in Los Angeles in May and June of 2020. And It involved 218 adult residents of Los Angeles County, and we found 28% binge drank alcohol more frequently, and Latinx and African Americans were more likely to increase their binge drinking. I'm trying to explain this complicated one. Can't read the numbers here, but actually on the upper right, lower right, excuse me, the binge drinking frequency for people who used regulatory relief, such as cocktails to go or home delivery, increased their binge drinking by whatever that number is, looks like around 40%. And on the lower left, you're seeing I can't explain it. I know it's on the next side. They switched to higher alcohol ABV products. That's typical under stress, especially economic stress, a switch from, say, beer to vodka to get more value for your dollar with alcohol. And 30% of individuals not using regulatory relief reduced their alcohol use. So that was the lower left orange bar, if you're reviewing this on your own. And drinking while virtually socializing increased 52%. So overall, we had binge drinkers increasing their drinking, and persons who were more social drinkers, who were now at home, were decreasing their binge drinking. And as I said, these are preliminary studies of what happened under COVID. Rand Corporation also did a study in May and June 2020 with a larger sample of 1,540 adults, and alcohol use increased 14% and increased by 1 day a month for 74% of the people that they surveyed. And women reported increases in heavy drinking, 17% increase in drinking days per month. And this is much more recent. You see the June 30th, 2021 JAMA, the Journal of American Medicine, has shown that alcohol-related diseases increased during the COVID-19 pandemic. I recommend everybody look at that opinion piece. So there's the bifurcation. The individuals who already binge drank were more likely to binge drink more, drink stronger alcohol, and seek novel ways to obtain alcohol. And individuals who did not binge drink were more likely to drink less. And that arrow should be pointing up. The drinking demographics for African American and Latinx and women were more likely to show an increase. The hospitality sector suffered. The retail sector grew. That is, on sale or online sales grew. Hard liquor sales, again, this shows it as well. This is from NIAAA, and the far right chart shows a significant increase in spirit sales, averaging the 10 states together that are shown on this graph. The risks for adolescents are, of course, that harmful use patterns that they've accumulated during the last year and a half might increase into adulthood. This is California ABC, for example. Their first survey was 60 or 70%, I believe, of drivers were not carding patrons when they, young patrons, when they went to their door. And that number has decreased. It's not only just 30% as reported by the NLLEA, it's down to 17%. But home delivery is a problem, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. There's also threats to any delivery drivers that they could be fired or deactivated for not finishing a sale if they're at the door because they're carding somebody. So there's threats to the drivers themselves. And there's no licensing and there's no requirements for responsible beverage service training for delivery people or the companies that do them. And of course, it's hard to, when there's masks being worn, it's hard to make any physical ID requirements. So now we're facing bills that will make regulatory relief permanent, which could include party zones, expanded music venues, shared service spaces. That would be what we commonly call expanded footprints, and open containers and cocktails to go. So midterm conclusions here. COVID lockdown made at-risk populations more at risk. Adolescents have increased access to alcohol at home, perhaps, and increased exposure to intoxicated individuals at their home. There could be long-term impacts on any population, especially on youth. And we're already in and showing an increase in elevated alcohol harms, especially for certain ethnic populations and for women. So who promotes all this drinking? It's big alcohol. Just a quick review here for everyone. There's a retail sector, both on sale and off sale. There's the distribution tier of wholesalers and producers, many of whom we refer to as big alcohol if they're not the craft brewers, and their trade associations and advertisers. So especially we need to be concerned about their associations who represent big alcohol. And these are some of the trade groups: Distilled Spirits Council of the United States, otherwise known as DISCUS, the Wine Institute out of California, which unites the wine industry, the Beer Institute, Responsibility.org is a front group for big alcohol, as well as the American Beverage Institute. DISCUS in particular and Diageo are very engaged in making regulatory relief permanent, because it is the cocktails, the hard liquor that especially is being delivered to the door and being shipped out the door as cocktail to go or curbside service. AB InBev, Anheuser-Busch InBev is the biggest of big alcohol. About 50% of alcohol sales, I believe, in the United States. They have a new CEO. Not sure how you say this. Michael Duqueiras, also Brazilian, as many of their leaders are. They're controlled by the 3G Capital Group out of Brazil. They're based in Belgium, and they're 25% owned by old nobility families of Belgium. And no photo available in this case means that under European internet laws, we can't show pictures of people who do not allow you to use their picture. So they're trying to stay hidden, and we can't show their picture. Molson Coors, which now owns the Miller's brand, is in the US, Canada, and Puerto Rico, is the second biggest player. And of course, Diageo is the biggest spirits or hard liquor promoter, and they're based in England. And they're the biggest promoter, as I said, of permanent deregulation, continuing the COVID laws going forward. So their tactics of big alcohol are consolidating, taking in small companies that have proven that they either could compete against them or that they'd like to see as part of their their product line. They target vulnerable populations with youth-oriented drinks, flavored malt beverages, hard seltzers, anything sweet, bubbly, and pretty high in alcohol content for something that's regulated as a beer. We call them alcopops. They have tremendous lobbying power at the local level, the state level, the national level. They promote self-regulation with any federal agencies that give a nod towards regulation. Their trade associations like the Beer Institute tend to be in charge of their own regulation of their advertising. And they blame parents and alcoholics, of course, as opposed to the fact that they're promoting these products 24/7. And they fund alternative science. Where does alcohol regulation fit in this? As advocates, we look at availability and access. We look at price, promotion, and products. Under COVID, we're very much looking at the increased availability through takeout, the accessibility and visibility of alcohol consumption on sidewalks, on parklets, on patios, either backyard patios or rooftops, and shared spaces or parks. Prices might be up a little bit, but that's probably true for everything in our economy right now. And we're seeing home delivery vastly increase, and cocktails to go, the idea of people walking around with cocktails or putting open containers in their cars. And this regulatory relief has been enabled by governors. This is my beloved Governor Gavin Newsom, who I personally think I like a lot of what he does, but he's a wine owner, a vineyard owner, he has retail through his Plump Jacks organization. So there's a lot of conflict of interest in his work. And he's the one that's been driving regulatory relief through Alcoholic Beverage Control Agency in California in particular, which is where alcohol justice is based. And of course, the legislature is meeting right now in California and everywhere else, moving forward with permanent deregulation. So let's talk about the specifics of some of this deregulation. We have expanded footprints of the off sale, of the on sale site. The restaurant and bar is now out in the street, and there's a lot of promotion in San Francisco and Los Angeles, and it's going out throughout the country of what we would call party zones. I've already mentioned a lot of this. There's some sharing of spaces with licensees, which really complicates who's in charge. Can you move from one location if you share a parking lot with 3 bars, say, and you close off the parking lot with tables or with stools, whatever. Who's in charge of regulating the activity in that location? Those are the entertainment zones or the party zones that we're worried about. And this whole idea of the Bourbon Street effect of just closing off streets and turning them into, it's great to have pedestrian areas, but do they have to be loaded up with alcohol, slushies and hurricanes and cocktails that people may have bought at their institutions, at their restaurants or bars. This is typical. We're seeing this everywhere in the country. It's great in the summer, perhaps, but taking over public spaces by restaurants and bars, and even other businesses might not want to see this. They want to see the traffic, they want to see people out, but they don't want to necessarily see public drinking everywhere. I'm not going to go into detail on this, but if you download these slides, you'll see a lot of instances of violence from large crowds and public drinking. We've been talking about environmental prevention in the alcohol field for a long time, which means not having environments that promote binge drinking and outdoor alcohol consumption. So a lot of your festivals and, it's best to have either an isolated area where drinking takes place or no drinking is allowed at those festivals because of the increased violence with large numbers of people drinking and plenty of kids in these environments. So you don't want that much exposure to alcohol by youth. We already talked about the stings taking place. And some states did allow alcohol to go previously, but it's vastly increased under COVID. Plenty of studies have been done on the impacts of adults drinking excessively and the impacts of advertising, which is very similar. When we see youth drinking when we see people drinking outside, youth are going to be seeing that too, and it normalizes alcohol consumption in a public setting. There's also what we call COVID washing. The big national news on that was when the craft brew, Boston Brewing Company advertised that they were giving out drinks for COVID vaccination, and also anything businesses picking up on we're doing great for COVID. We're giving out assistance, but they spend much more money advertising their assistance on COVID relief than they do on actually providing money. So it's really an advertising opportunity. And we think President Biden kind of got sold a bill of goods when Anheuser-Busch, he promoted Anheuser-Busch offering adults a free drink if they get a COVID shot. This, I think, is a giant data gathering scheme by Anheuser-Busch. It's a really onerous and detailed sign-up process you need to do on their website to get this free drink. And it's just kind of disgusting to see a beer company. And when alcohol can cause complications on your immune system and promote risky behavior and everything else, they should not be engaged in promoting vaccination in this way through free drinks. Reminds me of offering free drinks if you vote. It's just the wrong kind of incentive to be promoting. And also, not to mention, of course, that Anheuser-Busch InBev is still under federal court orders regarding their takeover of many of the Miller products internationally. And it seems a conflict of interest to have the White House cutting deals with Anheuser-Busch InBev when they're under a court settlement right now. So we're opening up again, getting out of the era of the lockdowns, we hope. This is from April 15th. It's probably all yellow now, which would mean all open. And at that time, only Massachusetts was still closed down. But we're getting there where everything is back open, perhaps with reduced capacity indoors. Cocktails to Go has been picking up. And NABCA, the National Alcoholic Beverage Control Association, NABCA website has got some really helpful maps here. The blue on this map of the United States shows where mixed drinks and secured drinks and manufactured drinks are allowed to be sold out the door of a restaurant or bar. I'm pretty sure this is, this could be either, I'm not sure if this is the permanent regs or the regulatory relief, actually. So, and home delivery also has vastly picked up in the last few years. And the blue again shows different way, the states that are allowing some kind of home delivery through these delivery services like Uber Eats or Grubhub, whatever you might have locally. So that's picking up as well, and needs some regulation. I'm not sure if it should be stopped altogether. I don't think it's possible anyway, but it should be regulated. And we'll talk about that a little more in a second, I think. Yeah, here it is. So these are some ideas for licensing and control of home delivery. And I'm going to read through this list. All third-party vendors should be licensed. Uber should be licensed for home delivery. All drivers should be licensed and trained. Retailers who conduct home delivery, that should, if they want to do home delivery of alcohol, whether they're a retail outlet or a on sale like a bar and restaurant, they also should be licensed for that, and their control agency should know. There should be responsible beverage service training for all anybody engaged at any level of any of these firms, including managers and owners. Liability should be assigned to all of them, to vendors, drivers, and delivery companies. It's just like a waiter is almost always liable for serving an underage drinker, or a bartender, or an owner. We don't have good liability in California, but most others, or many other states do, I should say. We should limit the hours when delivery takes place, and limit the locations, such as home delivery should not be allowed on college campuses. There's too many underage people that are in those locations. And we should limit the age of the delivery person. The driver has to be 21 or over to deliver alcohol to somebody's door. We should have increased monitoring and enforcement. We're vastly understaffed in our alcoholic beverage control agencies or liquor control agencies. This is NLLEA's data. I personally can't read this right now, but you see this vast difference in each state in the number of agents per licensed establishment. It's just an incredible difference in the amount of enforcement, and it needs to be increased in almost every state. There should be carding of home delivery, even if with a mask on, it's a little harder, but typical for a server, you want to make sure that the person is not drunk, not inebriated when you deliver alcohol, just as you would at a bar or restaurant at a table. And there are ways to look at how to check and see if somebody seems underage. But of course, the best way is ask for an ID. So a little op-ed I did. There's a lot of legislation taking place in almost every state to be that coordinated. I'm sure that Discus and Diageo are behind much of it, and they almost always get the chambers of commerce and the, whatever the industry associations are lobbying on this. It's just a tremendous burden for local people to have to deal with that. They usurp local control sometimes, and sometimes if we have cities advocating for permanent deregulation, they give up state control and give it to the cities to control. So you're putting out a fire in either your state capital or locally. So there has to be an effort to lobby back, to do grassroots organizing. Any organization, 501c3 organization, can lobby. I don't care how many government contracts you have. There's always a way to find $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 in your funding that is unrestricted, with which you can lobby. So that's it for now. It's a very huge effort by the alcohol industry to make deregulation under COVID permanent, to make regulatory relief permanent. Sometimes there will be laws extending it for a year or two, but remember, if that happens, that's not acceptable, because it still could be extended further at the end of that time. So we need to fight back at every level of government, especially local and state levels of government, of course, where alcohol regulation and taxation takes place. Thanks for listening, and I hope you have a great conference, and signing off from Alcohol Justice.